USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Edge for Friday, February 10th, 2023. Each week we handicap and prognosticate some top games for this weekend. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. We're going to start out with a game involving a team from Hockey East, two teams from Hockey East, Maine and Boston College. BC is going to head into the consolation round of the Beanpot on Monday. Maine plus 105, Boston College minus 135, and the over-under on this one is 6. It's interesting to me, maybe not so much with BC in the consolation round, but with teams in Hockey East, the four teams that participate in the Beanpot, having a single game leading into the weekend. I always wonder how much of the Beanpot is on their mind and how much the league game is.
Well, I can tell you, I talked to Greg Brown this morning over at Boston College. Their Beanpot game is not 1 ounce on their mind right now. They are just trying to get back on track. It's a Boston College team that it's going to break eventually. They're playing well and not getting the results. And for a while, that was because they weren't scoring goals. Now they're getting a little bit more scoring, still not getting the results. It's going to break at some point, but I don't know that Maine is the team that's going to break it, because doing some prep for the game this week, and I'm calling the game on Nesson. Maine has the second best record in Hockey East since December 1st. Only Boston University is better. Boston College over that same span, they're 8th. So Maine is playing its best hockey. I kind of said it on the call with Brownie today. I said, sometimes we forget about Maine because they're so far away. I haven't seen them yet. This is the last team I will see in Hockey East in person this season. But everything is pointing toward the positive for what Ben Barr is doing up there. He's getting good production. He's getting good goaltending. I know that BC is going to break through at some point, and they're going to win a game just because they're the better team. I'm not sure that is Friday. They might not be the better team when it comes to a matchup with Maine right now.
Yeah, I look at it this way, Jim. I think the point that you're making about BC is good, but the problem is that they haven't beaten a lot of teams. Like you said, it's the 8th best winning percentage in however many weeks it's been, but it's not. So when we say, well, they're going to beat someone, is it going to be a one-off game that they win, or are they going to get momentum? I think when you look at the Harvard game in the Beanpot, there's a lot about that game that kind of encapsulated what we've come to know about BC, which is they'll play great, but then something will break, and it'll be, whether it's fluky, whether it's freaky, however you want to look at it. They lost the game in overtime because they didn't skate the last 5 minutes, whatever it was. That to me is a sign that you can't pick them at this point. Yes, they're gonna beat a team. We believe they will, but until they beat that team, you can't in your right mind pick them. So I look at it and say, you got to go with Maine, because Maine. If Maine loses the game, it's an aberration to where it's been lately. I think you're right about Maine, though. A lot of people kind of forget about them because they're disconnected geographically from the rest of Hockey East, which I know people out west are going to be like, really? It's not that far. It's only a few hours. Yeah, well, half the league is within a 40-minute ride. So, that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, well, they might be disconnected geographically, but they've also been disconnected on the ice. Except for the year that Jeremy Swayman was all world, and unfortunately that entire postseason got canceled because of something called COVID. They haven't had a good finish yet. They were playing their best hockey probably in 10 years when Swayman had his career end by COVID. I want to go back to what you said about BC. And yes, they didn't play for the last 5 seconds of overtime. 7.5 seconds is really what it was. A stretch pass from behind the net turns into a 2-on-1, pucks in the back of the net. But the bigger problem was that they started slow. They outshot Harvard 40-14 over the second and third periods, 22-2 in the third. But they dug themselves a hole, a 2-0, their 3-1 deficit. So it's just there's little things. You nailed it. There's just little things, whatever it might be, a slow start, a bad bounce, taking a shift off. Somehow it's been beating them up a little bit. They've also run into some hot goaltending. They're now going to see Vic Osman this week. So another goaltender that's playing really well in Hockey East. I don't know about this game. I agree with you. I can't pick Boston College right now. If I had to pick somebody, it would be Maine. Over under of 6. I hate, though I wouldn't touch it because I kind of feel like this is a 3-2, 4-2 empty netter game.
Yeah, I don't like the over under here at all.
What about Maine? They have really thrived on home cooking. 9-4-1 at Alphond, 3-9-1 on the road.
And that's the problem. They haven't put up the efforts on the road. That's probably what's factored in. I think that they should have been a favorite even as a road team. But when your road team is bad, road record is bad or subpar as it is right now, you're not going to get that. So I think the bookmakers actually factored that in this week.
I will say this. Doesn't it feel good to kind of talk about Maine in this right light? Like it's been a long time coming. It feels kind of right. Like Maine's one of those teams. It'd be like if we got a Maine UNH run out of both those teams. Like feels kind of classic. It feels kind of throwback. I mean, Paul Correa is not exactly walking through the door for anybody anymore, but Maine coming back, it makes me feel a little bit good. I do think the home ice up there, if you've ever been up there, there's a reason why they're so good at home. I mean, one, you got to get there. It's not easy to get to. And two is once you get up there, you got to play in an arena that is a nightmare for road teams. It's just a hard place to play. So I'm interested to see how they do on the road, particularly at Connie Forum, which can feel cavernous a little bit if the atmosphere isn't there. So I think given everything that's going on, it's going to be really interesting if BC can make its home ice feel, when Connie's rocking, it's rocking. The question is it going to rock for Maine, and especially in between the two Beanpot weeks?
Yeah, and this is a tough little stretch here for Maine. They'll play this game against BC on Friday. They'll get Saturday off, Super Bowl Sunday, an afternoon game, and then 2 on the road against their rival New Hampshire. So they do finish with 4 at home, which will probably feel great. 2 against BC, 2 against UMass. But if they're going to make some hay and move up the standings, these next 2 weekends are when to do it.
And we've talked a little bit about what a great job Ben Barr has done in a situation where it's more difficult than like a BC or a BU where it's easy to recruit. Last year, he would never have said that those were some moral victories here and there, but they really were for that team. This year, there are no moral victories. It's about being competitive, and they're right in the thick of it in Hockey East. That's a great accomplishment for the Black Bears. Let's look at one other Hockey East game on the schedule here, and that's Northeastern. They're -110 at -120 Providence with an over-under of 5. Pretty much saying that it's a toss-up between these two, a slight edge for the home standing Friars.
Yeah, and this is a well-timed game for Northeastern. If you want to find a way to stay focused on the mission ahead in the week between the Beanpots as you're trying to head back to the Beanpot final on Monday, throw a team like Providence that's, somebody you need to beat if you're going to keep moving up the standings. They've had some ups and downs this year. They have plenty of talent. But throw a team like Providence at you the week between the Beanpots is probably a good thing. I like Northeastern in this game. Providence actually is a pretty good home team. But I still like Northeastern here. They're just playing well. Devin Levi he's lights out right now. I like the thought that this one could even stay under 5, even though I would never bet it. 5 is a absolutely diabolical number in any hockey, especially college.
Yeah, I'm with you. My problem with the Northeastern game when it turns into an over under of 5 is just that Devin Levi, I don't think Providence is scoring 2 goals on him. So if they're going to win this game, or if they're going to win the game, they're going to score, and there's going to be a 2-1, 3-1 type game. So this is not going to be high scoring. And I agree. That's why I'm kind of leaning Northeastern. Plus, they've been playing tremendous hockey. I kind of called the Beanpot final at the end of last week when I said we'd see something we never saw before. So I'm really interested to see what Northeastern can do against Harvard. They're creeping up to a degree that they're going to impact. They win this game, they win on Monday, and all of a sudden Northeastern is probably the toughest 4 seed in the pairwise right now. So I really like Northeastern with the way that they've been playing. They're on that run. They're playing their best hockey at the right time. The over under is just like you said. That's if you're betting over on that, you're a psycho. That's all I'm going with. You are just psychotic if you're picking over 5 on this.
Well, we've got to look at a couple of Big Ten games and a major tilt in the NCHC coming up. USCHO Edge is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to help your team rule the rink? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, go big for every goal. 2, when you bring it, bring enough for the whole class. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
We're back with USCHO Edge. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. A couple of big games, a couple of kind of rivalry games. Certainly the first one is in the Big Ten, and that big one is Michigan, -175 at Michigan State, +140. The over-under is 6.5. I know the cliche is when these two teams meet, you can throw the record books right out the window, but the Wolverines have been on fire, and Michigan State just kind of coming out of a slump.
Yeah, of course, Michigan State makes this a much more difficult pick by playing well last weekend, because it had been a rough patch for the Spartans. But you earn a sweep against Notre Dame, only allowed 2 goals in those games, and suddenly you're saying, "Hey, maybe Michigan State's better." Well, this is Michigan. They are really hot right now. I think it's 5 in a row, maybe 7 of 9. And they're scoring goals. They're letting up a lot too, which I don't know that I love, but they're scoring a ton of goals. And if you're going to average, I think it's over 5.5 goals a game in the last stretch of 5. So that takes into account there's a 9 in there. I think there was a 7 in there. There's some big scores, and that's a dangerous offense. Really hard to shut them down right now. I don't know that Michigan State has the defense to do that, but they're coming off a good weekend, where they only allowed 2 goals to Notre Dame.
I like Michigan State as a value, being a home underdog, and given everything that we know about the rivalry and that they.
Is 140 now a value to you, Dan?
Well, I mean, we're talking about it like it's a done deal for Michigan. So, I mean, if you're throwing some of the stuff out the window and you say, yeah, but it's a rivalry. Yeah, Michigan scores a lot, but it's a rivalry. Yeah, Michigan State played. Yeah, Michigan's pumping goals into the back of the net. Yeah, but it's Michigan State. Michigan State played well last week. So then I think if you want to play the yeah, but I don't know if that creates value, but yeah, but hey, take them. Why not? I mean, throw some action down on them. I wouldn't blame anybody for taking Michigan State here. I would blame someone for betting the under. I think this one's going over.
Yeah, same here.
I think this is going way over.
If there's one game that I like out of these two, for me, it's actually probably the Saturday game for Michigan State. Home ice, listen, it's been pretty friendly to Michigan State this season. But I still think that when you play that game, that's the game that's going to be played downtown at the Little Caesars Arena. So I feel like that might be the night that you see the upset. I don't know why you wouldn't see one at Lansing, but I just feel like Michigan, they'll get up for Friday night. Maybe they take a step back on the big stage on Saturday.
Well, let's look at the other game in the Big Ten, and that is Ohio State. They're a -110 at a -120 Notre Dame, very much like the Northeastern Providence game we talked about before. This one is sort of a toss-up, but this is a much bigger game, a much bigger series this weekend for Notre Dame. Notre Dame sitting at 6th place in the Big Ten right now and outside the bubble at 19th in the pairwise. Meanwhile, Ohio State is in a 4-way tie for 2nd place. They have a couple of games in hand against a bunch of the league, and they're sitting relatively comfortably at 8th in the pairwise. They are almost, not 100%, but almost assured of an NCAA at-large bid at this point. The over-under is 5.5. Does desperation play into this for the Fighting Irish?
It should, but does it? I don't know. They didn't show a lot of life last weekend, and that kind of concerns me because it should have been desperation weekend last weekend. You had Michigan State, a team that in concept you should be able to beat, but they didn't. So I do have concern about Notre Dame. Ohio State, I have a little concern with, in that they're not sweeping weekends. They're splitting everything of late. So, I'd stay away from this series personally, because I feel like, or maybe you wait till you see Friday's result and bet the opposite on Saturday, because it does feel like this is going to be a split. It's just too hard to handicap this one. They're both pretty good teams. Notre Dame just has struggled lately, and until they fix that and get back on the right road, it's a long haul for them. So I don't know, Dan, I'd love your thoughts on this, because this one's just a little bit more difficult for me to handicap.
Look, I like Notre Dame. I've said that from the beginning. I think Jeff Jackson is one of the best primetime coaches, I think, in college hockey, and I think he's the type of coach that can get a team up for late in the season. The problem is that, as I've been saying, that they didn't really show much last weekend. And you know how I feel about Notre Dame in general, not necessarily on Fridays, but in general on weekends. And I am willing to not take Notre Dame because of that. I also don't I'd almost make Notre Dame a home underdog in this case, and I'd be willing to bet them. But since that's not happening, I'd take Ohio State because it just doesn't seem like Notre Dame's the right bet. Over under, I'd probably dive into that. And, you know me in the Big Ten and in general, I'd bang the over on this because I think the Big Ten can hit the over.
Usually goes that way. I will give you this stat. The last time Notre Dame swept a team not named Wisconsin was October 14th and 15th, Northern Michigan. So it's been a while. They're getting some splits here and there. They're not typically getting swept. That's why they're where they are. They're one game below 500 overall. And you look at their schedule and you go, oh yeah, look at that. Win, loss, win, loss. They're splitting every series, it seems. Throw a couple of ties in there for good measure.
October 14th, I was probably sleeping as much as I am right now, which Chris, shout out the fact that I'm recording this while feeding a child. That is dedication to the craft.
Second time you've mentioned that one.
Yeah, and we're not talking about tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches here either.
Correct. But listen, I haven't slept. My house partied between 2:30 and 5 a.m. 2 nights in a row.
Wow. Slumber party for the girls, huh?
Oh, God. No, maybe shouldn't be listening to my betting podcast right now.
Well,
they can't understand the thing you're saying.
Well, let's look at the last one on our list, and it's one that in other seasons might be a bigger matchup and certainly a lot closer. North Dakota is plus 165 at Denver, which is minus 205. Denver comes into this 2 points ahead of Western Michigan, but with 2 games in hand. Meanwhile, North Dakota is 9 points out of home ice behind Omaha coming into this. North Dakota's only way into the tournament is to win the NCHC. Over-under is 6.5 on this matchup.
And of course, North Dakota's played a little bit better of late. 3-1 in their last 4. The one loss was a 2-1 loss against Duluth. But they played Miami and Duluth in those games. They did not play Denver. And Denver is they feel like they're a machine right now. They're kind of rolling. I wouldn't want to have to go into Denver. They know what's on the line. That they want to get a regular season championship, and they understand. The Pioneers understand there's no room for error. So I don't expect any error this week.
I mean, it feels kind of weird looking at North Dakota in that you're just kind of like writing them. Like, I don't want to say we're writing them off, but we're kind of writing them off. Like, right. We look at Denver and say, well, Denver's this, Denver's that. We used to say that about North Dakota. And I know a lot of North Dakota fans are going to listen to this and be very angry at what I'm saying, but underdog North Dakota on the road at Denver does not feel like a good bet. And I am not paid. Like you look at them and you want to believe that North Dakota is North Dakota. I think I said it earlier in the season when I'm like, look, they were an underdog at one point. And I was like, boy, you just feel like that's not the team that you want to look at it as an underdog and say, well, I'm going to take you. You look at them and you say you want to take them because, oh man, the fans, everything that they bring to the table. Yeah, I think that's all well and good. I think that's phenomenal. I think what they do up there is great with community support. They're not a good hockey team in comparison to Denver. I mean, they're not in the tournament. I don't think they're going to win the NCHC because the NCHC is loaded the way that it is. What's this going to make 2 or 3 years in a row that they're going to miss the tournament? I mean, this is not a North Dakota team that is the cream of the crop in the NCHC. And until they prove that they can be that, then I'm not taking them. And I realize this is coming from the guy who said at the beginning of the year that I think that they were going to be that team by the end. They're not. So I will say, hey, it's the NCHC. You know how I feel about the Western leagues. Let's bang the over. Why not? I mean, there's going to be goals. There's going to be a lot of them. And I think Denver's going to win this series.
Before you get hammered, North Dakota played in the last 2 NCAA tournaments.
Never mind that. I feel like I'm stuck on the. You know what it is? I'm hung up on the Canisius. Beat them twice.
That was years ago, buddy.
That was a while ago. Yeah, I'll. You know what? I'm wrong. It's fine. I can be wrong. But they haven't made a lot of noise.
They missed 18 and 19. They did miss recently, but not the last 2 years. It will be a very subdued atmosphere in Fargo, though, for the regional this year.
Yeah. Look, 2 years ago, too, was COVID. That's everyone gets a free pass for that tournament.
North Dakota is a bit of a moving target, though. And I say that because they started back in November. They started the NCHC season with 5 players out to injury. They've been bitten by injury right along. They get players back. They get other ones injured. If you follow our friend Brad Schlossman for the Grand Forks Herald, he has all kinds of detail on it. So in a way, it's been a little bit of a snake-bitten season for North Dakota, too. And if they can get healthy as they head into the playoffs, that could mean, to use a phrase, all bets are off.
Yeah, I do worry about that. And that is when you get, teams with a winning pedigree, they can become more scary in the playoffs. And we've seen teams make those runs in various leagues.
I would agree with that, except the NCHC has teams that know how to handle that, and in particular, Denver.
Well, it should be a fun series no matter what, as those rivalries in the last decade or so have really amplified within that conference. And that's going to wrap it up for this week for USCHO Edge. It's sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen 4, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Find our podcasts at uscho.com/podcasts or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Edge.